Evans and Pedler family, thank you all for coming here today to celebrate the life of Harriet and Bob Evans. I too would like to start with a little scripture, but mine has to do more with Bob and Harriet. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh." And then from the Gospel of Mark, Jesus called his disciples together, and he began to send them out two by two. There have been many famous individuals whom we know more as a couple than as individual persons. For those of us in the gray hair generation, we might remember Fred and Ginger, the famous dancers, or George and Gracie, the comedians, or Sonny and Cher, the singers, or more contemporary Brad and Angelina, the actors. Now, whether we refer to them as Mom and Dad, Grammy and Poppy, or Bob and Harriet, they are part of this group. Two distinct individuals, but yet we see them and know them as a couple. In some ways, Bob and Harriet were as different as night and day. Yet we cannot think of one without remembering the other. God sent them in their lives' path two by two to have and to hold each other through life as one. And I think as fitting for them, called them together in death. Bob, Dave, and Keith have honored their parents' wishes with having Harriet's memorial service today, and there will be a small private memorial for Bob later. Harriet, the outgoing, fun-loving individual, would have loved to have been here today, celebrating with each and every one of you, and would have appreciated spending time and in conversation. Bob, the more reserved, humble, and quiet, and introspective person, would not have liked all of the attention. But I do know that he would appreciate each of you being here this day, and would have valued spending a little bit of time with all of you. Now, Bob, Dave, and Keith have honored their parents' wishes. Fortunately, I didn't make any such promises to Bob. So, as Pastor Round said, we can honor Bob today, too, and remember him. Marilyn and I met Bob and Harriet about 20 years ago when our daughter Kara and Keith were just friends, as they kept reminding us. Bob and Harriet invited us up to their house to watch the fireworks on the 3rd of July. And their hospitality was wonderful. The food and drink were plentiful. And I don't think I am ever going to be able to hear a firework go off or watch an explosion in the sky without thinking of Bob and Harriet. I learned that night that Harriet loves to talk. And Bob listened. Up to a point. More than once I heard him say to Harriet something like, "Give it a rest, will you?" This wasn't wasn't to be mean, but it was simply Bob's way of indicating that he had something to say, or it was somebody else's turn to talk. If Bob really wanted to aggravate Harriet, he would grab a hold of her hands because she had a problem with moving her hands when she talked. The mouth and the hands went together. But if you got an opportunity to just sit with Bob, he had a lot to say. He was an intelligent man, a thoughtful man. He and I had many conversations, just the two of us, about people and politics, family and friends and world events. And I thoroughly enjoyed our visits together. Now, Bob and Dave and Keith have given me some memories to share of their mom and dad that I would like to read to you now. Starting with Keith, because we're semi-related. Once in a while I need to be nice to him, and today is the day. So from Keith. Harriet was known as a generous person, and she liked to shop. Gifts were always being sent to her grandchildren. And a visit back to Butte for the grandkids was not complete without a trip to Herberger's. But to Harriet, who needs to go to Herberger's in a snowstorm when you can shop at home on your television at QVC? The brown delivery truck used to stop at Lewishon so often that Bob quit calling him the UPS man and started calling him the QVC man. Unfortunately, the gifts that were sent were not always opened and used immediately. One time she sent Keith a set of solar garden lights. That was a time when Keith and Kara were moving. And in the process of moving, Keith decided to have a giant everything must go garage sale. He sold the refrigerator, the couch, the table, his son's Spider-Man toy, which Cameron, he said, was an accident. And a brand new, still in the box, set of solar lights. Gone, all sold. But Harriet, being the good mother that she was, certainly chewed him out. After that incident, Keith didn't get quite as many gifts mailed to him as his brothers Bob and Dave. But even in death, Harriet was a deliverer of gifts. Keith inherited all of Harriet's old solar lights. I believe it was one of his brothers that said, "She is your mother, and you're going to take them and light them." You could describe Bob as a simple person. However, his simple design was God's perfect masterpiece. He was a self-made man, learning various skills on his own. He was rich with wit, wisdom, and humor. He had enough money to go to Europe, but he simply stated, "Why in the hell would I want to go to Europe?" He had everything he needed. He found joy in the simple pleasures of life: pets, family, Harriet, a glass of Carlo Rossi wine or a martini. He loved a good steak and spending time in the woods, either on a horse, his motorcycle, or camping. And Bob was a collector of stuff. It wasn't junk, at least not to him. If he saw something that was shiny or unique on the ground, home it went in his pocket. Because you never know when you need a stainless steel quarter-inch fitting for a 1966 Corvette. In their days at home, if you were one of Bob's sons of one of friends of one of Bob's sons, you would commonly hear, "Don't worry, fellows, we can fix it. My dad has everything." was rarely a need to go to the hardware store because Bob had every screw, washer, nail, nut, and bolt imaginable, and every instrument to punch, pull, drill, cut, or grind. He cherished his tools and taught his sons to do the same. Unfortunately, the baby of the family, Keith, didn't quite learn the lesson soon enough and left several of the tools somewhere around Big Butte. You can all learn lessons from Bob. Be grateful for what you have and live within your means. Material things will not bring you happiness, but a martini can bring a smile to your face. From their son Bob. Many of our family traditions or rituals came from Mom and her side of the family. Money and birthday cakes, sage dressing at Thanksgiving, cold duck champagne at holiday dinners. Traditions are part of the fabric of family life. And these traditions continue on through her sons and grandchildren. Thanks, Mom. She was an extrovert and married an introvert. She was quite athletic. It was she who introduced the boys to skiing, tennis, and racquetball. She was proud of her time spent in Girl Scouts, and she skied well into her late 50s, very much enjoying skiing at Discovery Basin. Mom was always felt comfortable with anybody, anywhere. I always admired that about her. I admired her confidence. She was my biggest cheerleader and promoter and my considerate and confidential critique. They weren't always confidential, Mom. Dad once remarked that one of his favorite qualities about Mom is that she was always willing to try something new. And for Bob, a quote from Abraham Lincoln said it best: "All that I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother." And about his dad, I always admired my father's abilities with building or fabricating things from metal. The fit and the finish were always exact. One might guess that the pieces were store-bought. That I know of, he had no formal training, but the things he made, be it toolboxes for his motorcycles or grill guards for his trucks, they were well made and nice looking. Bob recently learned from one of his father's cousins that his father used to be the go-to guy for hot shoes. These were used by local flat-track motorcycle racers. A hot shoe is a metal that's fastened to the sole of the boot, used by the rider as he circles the track, with the hot shoe skidding on the track in the dirt corners of the racetrack. Hot shoes had to be custom fit for each individual racer, and the shoe had to fit perfectly with their boot and the racer's respective specifications. So one can only imagine it took a pretty skilled and meticulous welder to fabricate such hot shoes. The lessons that Bob learned from his dad: be good to your mom, love and honor her always, how to care for pets, how to decorate a Christmas tree, and regardless of the job or task, give it your best and do it right the first time, and always be a gentleman. His mother taught him everything else. From Bob, his parents set the finest example for their sons with regard to life, love, family, and friends. They remained devoted to one another until the very end. And in the face of a terminal disease with no hope of a cure, They were so courageous for one another. I will miss them for the rest of my days. But as the days pass, tears are replaced with laughter as wonderful memories swirl through my head. And then from Dave. This happened the day before their mother passed. Dave was moving some flowers, many of the arrangements that she had in her bedroom at the assisted living home. He was doing this very quietly because he thought his mom was asleep. All of a sudden, he heard her say, and I think those of you that know Harriet can hear this, "Wipe the bottom of the vases before you put them on the dresser." Dave only could shake his head and laugh. She smiled back at him as to say, "That's right. I'm still your mother, up until the very end." That was the last time he saw her smile. The smile that will be ingrained in his memory forever. The thing that he loved about his dad in his later years was that his dad took on the role of friend, not parent. He wouldn't lecture him or give his opinion unless asked. And his dad shared this story with Dave. Shortly after he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, Bob had made an appointment with his favorite orthopedic physician, Dr. Wendt, in Anaconda, to receive an injection in his shoulder. Dave said to his father, "Dad, I can't believe, as sick and as much pain as you are in, that you drove to Anaconda by yourself on the treacherous winter roads to have your shoulder injected." Bob replied, "Ah, Davy, I didn't need my shoulder injected. I just wanted to personally thank Dr. Wendt for giving me 2 new knees, fixing my carpal tunnel, and everything else he has done for Harriet and me the past 20 years to make our golden years so much better." Bob made Dr. Wendt cry, but he didn't mean to. Dave, wiping his tears from his eyes, just nodded and smiled. And minutes before Bob passed away, he needed help going to the restroom. 4 aides came in to give him a hand. He knew that they were working their tails off, taking care of him. And when they finally got him to bed, he said, "I just want to thank you, girls, for everything you've done for me." He then closed his eyes, never woke up. Bob Evans, grateful to the end. In the remarks, all 3 boys expressed their deep and sincere love for their parents. As parents often do, our conversations with Bob and Harriet often turn to our children's misdeeds, past and current. And at least for the Evans boys, there seem to be many. Bob would often just shake his head. But the other thing that was apparent in our conversations was the love and the care that they shared for each other. And that love can only be compared to the love that they have for each of their sons. Bob, Dave, and Keith, although your mom and dad are gone in body, their love for you will live on.